Whole Foods. I choose to go through every drive-through that I can find. I choose not to be active. And I really don't care if I gained 20 pounds last year. Now, is genetics going to drive the bus? Am I going to become diabetic like my mom or my dad? And the answer is very, very likely. And so I call it hope when I have folks that come in and they go, wow, look at my gene pool. I should just give up now. You know, and I'm going, you know, the exciting part is Gen X does not have to drive the bus.
Epigenetics we learned about in the undo
Okay.
diabetes.
All right.
Yeah.
Epigenetics. And Doc Louis on the 27th is studying for his certification, and that's part of what he's hopefully going to be bringing to the table. And
Andrew's on the 13th, isn't that?
Doc Andrews is going to be here on the 13th, yes.
Same subject or?
And I don't know about same subject. I've just asked him to kind of tie in how what we're eating is actually affecting our brains and moods. Okay, so it's kind of fun to have the psychiatrist come in and you know be talking about things like that.
My brother has perceived wrongs from his past.
Okay.
And I really believe that it affects the Crohn. He now has he can't even leave the house anymore because of all this all the problems from it. But on Facebook, it's very angry. Very angry, and so I'm beginning to think that it's very related to the mental health issue to that. Because he's vegan now, and it still has the problem with all the, so cut out all the meat, he's cut out all the stuff by trying to self-diagnose and all kinds of, so I really believe that mental health, not forgiving plays a huge part in it for him.
Yes, and you know I guess that's part of the reason I really love being a PA in psychiatry, because it is just awesome to actually see the need of and the ability to actually retrain our thought process. And you know, you have somebody that's downright angry. You have somebody that doesn't feel good. They're definitely going to be, you know, more on edge. You know, and I have a young man that I've unfortunately had to hospitalize him a few times. You know, to protect you folks. If you were at the same service station that he is when he goes to fill up his car, even if you look at him, he's going to be thinking you're thinking negative thoughts about him, and very likely going to come over and definitely want to do you know, physical harm. And so when you don't feel good, you're more on edge. You can get yourself all worked up, and before long your thought processing really is going to be impaired. And if you're not eating well, you're not exercising, you've withdrawn, you're not getting out of the house, it's a beautiful day and you don't even go out and enjoy any sunshine or fresh air, I got to tell you, the negatives just continue to grow. And the pleasure that I have is when this week I had to bring it home and show Margot, you know, this very, very wonderful, you know, lady just had dropped a bottle in a sink of a house that she was cleaning and didn't know what was in the bottle, but it splashed up and got into her eye. It literally ate the outer layer of the cornea off. Seeing the eye doc in an emergent situation, you know, unfortunately the call had gotten him off the golf course, which, you know, if he's anything like me, I wasn't going to be too excited about it. And then the interaction with him did not go well, and a couple hours later another phone call was made, and the interaction just went from bad to worse, and the next thing I know, I have a young lady in my office in crisis. because of that the negatives were just allowed to get completely out of control, and there was really no ability to think about how am I going to deal with this. And I was able to you know, calm her, talk through some strategies, discuss with her the medication options that were on the table, with recommendation that we avoid the heavier opioid medications and just use a little different strategy, you know, for anti-inflammatory means. And to have her leave, you know, walked out and reviewed this with her husband, so that I knew that everybody was on the same page. And she brings in the most beautiful thank you card. And I'm just going, you know, and I think that just surpasses any monetary, you know, value. You know,
How's her eye?
completely healed.
Praise God.
Yeah, the eye is a wonderful thing. And, you know, and she goes, you know, Rob, you were so spot on. You know, the eye doc was upset because he had come in off the golf course. He was upset because he had a lot of the things that she's now found out over the last several weeks that were going on in his life. And I had told her, I said, you know, he's probably just having a bad day. You know, he very much cares about your eye and your vision. And she came back and she goes, you know, you were just, you know, you were right about that, and just feeling better, and being able to you know, start reducing those negatives so that we can get to the point where now we can start building positives. And I think that is such an important, you know, strategy, and you know, that definitely needs to happen in that case. Yes.
She mentioned something, her boy, was it your son?
My brother.
Your brother was, went vegetarian or went vegan. Linda and I were discussing this, you know, you can overdose on water if that's all you're taking, you know, so it's balance and everything, and it's also, you know, you need somebody to help guide you through that process, because I mean, I've been a bachelor for a month at a time, and I just eat 30 days of potatoes because I don't know how to cook. Well, I end up having health issues. Guess what? I bring a lot of, I'm vegan, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have any issues if you're not careful with your lifestyle.
For him, so
So,
yes, he does.
You know, there may be education process, that's why classes like this are so beneficial, because
Awesome.
you can overdose on potatoes.
Yeah.
You know, it's a nightshade, and that affects arthritis, and you know, I've had a lot of injuries in my young life already, you gotta be aware of that. So
Yeah.
your body, you gotta listen to your body, but you also gotta be smart with your diet, and not just go on all.
Absolutely,
One eye.
and you know, that's one word that I use a lot, and I hope every person in this class really understands the importance of balance. See me after class, I'll give you a business card. Yeah, a whole month of potatoes, I like that.
It was good the first 2 weeks, but the last 2 weeks, they were pretty bad.
Just to be clear, he also has Mardi Gras disease.
Oh.
So that,
Okay,
so that was the first diagnosis, and then, you know, because of that, then all these other issues. And
sure. And so in his mind, it's one layer on top of another, on top of another, and it's just so incredibly important. We, you know, there's definitely, you know, need of professional help oftentimes, you know, in that scenario.
And
So-
perceived wrongs from.
Yep.
From way back.
Right, and yeah, you know, so somebody wronged me 12 years ago, and you know, and I can recall every detail, plus all I'm eating is potatoes. You know, and I've got body aches and pains, and before long our thought processing is just so completely in chaos. We really are struggling to make good choices. Yes?
It seems to me that a good prescription for some of this stuff, like her brother,
Mhm.
and I'm not trying to say I know these things, but is to tell him to go out to, say, children's hospitals or whatever, and find out some of these little kids are having the deck stacked against them.
Sure.
They're going to be happy just to get into teenagehood,
Yeah.
and you kind of put your own problems in perspective
Right.
in a way that you're not always focused on me, the world
Sure.
has done me wrong.
You know, and I think that's one of the beauties as we improve in health, we actually get to the point where we can do that. Many folks are not there. And for me personally, I think that's one of the blessings that I get to see every day, You know, about 3 weeks ago, I had a gentleman in my office. He's in his 60s. I've worked with him for 4 years. And last November, he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. And every time I saw him, right after the diagnosis, he was afraid that I wasn't going to continue to treat his concern. And I looked at him and I said, you know, our focus is going to be improving your overall quality of life. And I said, I'm going to be, my number one goal for you is to make sure your smiling muscles work and to make sure that you can complete the tasks and goals to the best of your abilities. And he goes, I'm sure hoping that I'm going to be the one that survives this. Well, 3 weeks ago, he came in, he had lost another 15 pounds, and he goes, Rob, my back really hurts. He said, do you mind if I lie down on your couch? And I said, not a bit. And so he kind of swung one leg up on the back, and he's laying there, and we're just having a great conversation. And I got to tell you, I had a really hard time not becoming emotional, because I knew that was going to be the last time that I saw him.
Oh, wow.
And unfortunately, last weekend, that became the case. But I got to tell you, when I look back, when I met this gentleman, the years that I've had working with this gentleman, making sure that his smiling muscles were working, making sure that his quality of life was where he felt he needed to be. That's an experience that I wanted to share with you, because I think it's really important. We've got to understand that, yeah, our personal problems, you know, oftentimes we don't have to go to the hospital to find them. We can find that with somebody on the street. They're going to have more problems. And so when we become specialists in growing positives, when we start recognizing, you know, when I go and I'm buying a product at the grocery store, when I look at the calories, when I look at the fat and the fiber and you know, the protein, the sodium, the sugars, and all that, you know, I threw this up here because it's exciting to me when we start looking at something like steel-cut oats. How many of you are familiar with steel-cut oats? Okay. You know, I love steel-cut oats, although I love old-fashioned rolled oats too. But I will tell you, when you look at the calories, okay, so we're sitting here going 350. I go to McDonald's, I order a fruit and maple oatmeal, 290 calories. Then I go over here to Quaker instant oatmeal, 320 calories. So you can see they're all kind of in the ballpark. Yes.
My question, when I see, I mean, I understand the quick, instant, the refined
Sure.
stuff, okay. But steel cut is literally, you take the whole oat road,
Right.
and you go through some kind of coarse grinder that just cuts them.
Right.
And that's it.
Mm-hmm.
I have a little machine that rolls them.
Got it.
You know, and literally, it's just a metal roller.
Nice.
It just flattens them, and
Right.
it makes them, and so I'm just curious.
You're going, hey, nutritionally, what's the difference? I just
Right.
ran it through my little roller,
Right.
you know, and now I have a difference.
Right.
Well, at Natural Way Mills up in Middle River, Minnesota,
Right.
I was privileged to work there for you know, several years. But I got to tell you that mill, it's all organic, and it's literally the amount of screening. You know, if I'm going to do a refined flour, I add more screens.
Right.
Okay, and so I'm just kind of basically it literally turns into what I'm removing from that grain. You know, if I'm going to keep the bran in, I'm going to call it whole wheat. If I'm going to completely remove the bran, now I'm going to call it white. And so basically, when we're talking about less refinement, you know, and that's the take home that I want you to each grab from this slide. Because the less refined food, we're going to find higher benefit. Look at the fiber. We're going to have 15 grams in steel cut oats where we're gonna drop to 5 grams. The fruit and maple oatmeal, I'm not that familiar with, but I'm assuming it's gonna be a quick oat. You know, something that's been more refined, so that's decreased the amount of fiber, just simply because now, visualize, they just threw more screens on. We're getting rid of that bran, and then we're adding fruit and maple. And I'm sure this is going to be what you're gonna find listed as natural flavorings, or you know, and potentially artificial. So, yes.
Yeah, to go back to his roller,
Yes.
if I have a little oat, the little kernel,
Mm-hmm.
and I cut it in half,
Mm-hmm.
or I press it flat, what is the difference in those two?
You haven't lost anything.
Okay,
But when you start refining, you know,
Okay.
and Gene's roller isn't doing that. And so we're on the same page. The only difference is, I think oftentimes would be the volume. You know, and so you're gonna have some volume differences. You know, as you roll it through your roller the third time, it's gonna take more to fill up the bowl. You know, because you're compressing, you're physically changing. Yes?
I noticed one thing about healthier lifestyle is it takes longer to get through a meal. So I think chewing has something to do with it too, because a meal shouldn't be just instant,
Right.
you know, and we want everything fast, and if you, I think some of this stuff, like those oats there, you gotta chew them. You're gonna have strong jaw muscles and stuff out of a lot of this stuff, you know?
Right.
But isn't that the way it's supposed to be? Isn't it supposed to be, then you get the benefit of that? Or you can have a machine that breaks it all up and you
Right.
drink it and you're done and you're on the road.
Right. So basically, you know, Ted's brought up a really important point here. What's the, you know, the first stage of digestion?
The chewing.
Mastication. and
Mastication.
saliva.
Saliva. First stage, right here in the mouth. So you'll notice we didn't have a lot of fluids, and I haven't heard anybody choking yet this morning with breakfast. But what happens if we can consume a lot of fluid with our meal?
Yeah, that's the digestive juices.
Less digestive, less saliva production. And so that's why, you know, as we're learning more about the digestive process, understanding that, yeah, not drinking a lot of fluids with our meals just makes sense. Our body's gonna actually produce more saliva. You know, I think Dwayne kind of took this to the next level. He's actually eating, was it grape nuts he was eating? I'm trying to remember. I think it was grape nuts. You know, a boxed cereal, but he pours it in a bowl. Those of you that are familiar with grape nuts, and then doesn't add any milk or anything, just puts a spoon in his mouth of grape nuts.
Chewing for a while.
very busy.
So what's gonna happen? You know,
Saliva.
saliva production. And boy, let me tell you, I actually tried this, and I gotta tell you, my hat was off to Dwayne at the time. I'm just going, wow. You know, talk about getting your body to produce saliva, that's one way to do it. So we've got fiber, yes.
Well, getting back to Gene's question about the roller, you can kind of get an idea what the food's doing in your stomach by just leaving the food in the pot or in a bowl for a while with some milk or something.
Mm-hmm.
And if it still tastes lumpy after half an hour, it's probably, I call it undercooked. They recommend like pasta be undercooked so that it doesn't digest as quickly. It raises your blood sugars gradually.
Right.
Well, if you're eating steel-cut oats, you'll notice that the whole berries are still lumpy.
Right.
Doesn't matter how long they sit in a pot. You can, once they're rolled, they tend to cook more thoroughly.
Right.
They get mushier quicker, so they're going to digest just a little bit faster, which means your blood sugars will rise a little bit
A
higher.
little faster. Love that. Love that. Thank you, Doc. You know, it's interesting because steel cut oats, what is it, 25 minutes? Was it a ratio of 3 to 1, and you have to put it on the stove for about 25 minutes, okay? So one of the strategies is actually, I've had folks put it in the pan, 3 to 1 ratio with water, put the lid on the pan, leave it sit on the stove, of course not turned on, but leave it sit there overnight. The next morning they can actually flip it on, it takes about 10 minutes. But it's that, you know, whole food is just gonna be much harder to break down. and give us that extended, benefit. And then when you look at, on this, the steel cut, we're at 15 grams, 5 grams with the McDonald's version. We got a Quaker instant oatmeal, cinnamon and spice, 4 grams of fiber. I mean, that, all of a sudden, we just knocked down, significantly the fiber. We look at the sugar, 10 grams in steel cuts, steel cut oats, 32 grams in our McDonald's version, 29 grams. And so we're just, again, sitting here going, wow, that can have a profound effect. And that's where a lot of diabetics actually run the other way from oatmeal, because this is what they're looking at, where if we're giving them something like millet or the whole grain steel cut version, it's going to have a much less pronounced effect on their blood sugars. Then of course the carbs, the sodium's pretty significant too. I mean, you've got natural occurring sodium there at 60 milligram, it jumps to 160 and then up to 425.
That's a lot.
And yeah, so it's again, we start jumping in, and companies, I'm sure Quaker, growing up, I'm always thinking about Quaker Oats,
Right.
but they are going to be as interested as every other company out there in making a product that you and I want to go to the store, pick off the shelves. Yes.
Well, isn't the Quaker Oats even the old-fashioned pre-cooked, steamed, pre-cooked, and then rolled? So it's already been processed,
Already.
cooking too.
Yeah, and very likely, and again, just a wonderful venue to actually lose some of the nutritional benefit along the way. And it's kind of fun when you can buy the product and go, okay, I know nothing's been lost, Dennis Burkett, MD, and the Fiber Story. And I just pulled this off the internet and had to throw it on a slide. But I think that this just really underscores societies that eat unrefined foods produce large stools and build small hospitals. Pretty important. Societies that eat fiber-depleted foods produce small stools and build large hospitals. And it's pretty significant when the whole, and this was 1970. There's a segment here on the end of the fiber section in chapter 2, and it was pointed out that Dr. Burkett in 1970 was trying to bring the attention to the healthcare profession of the significance of fiber. He was a surgeon who worked in Africa and worked in many mission hospitals. He was impressed that the pattern of disease was so different there from what he was used to at home. In the UK, appendicitis was the commonest surgical emergency, but in Africa it was almost unknown. The commonest conditions in Europe included varicose veins, gallbladder problems, hernia, diverticulitis, were rare and even unknown in Africa. After much work and observation, he concluded that it was diet that had made the difference. The African food was simple and unrefined, with its full complement of fiber. And observation of stools showed that fiber was the protective factor. And I just when you stop and think about it, and you can kind of boil it down to this, you're going, oh, wait a minute, fiber is playing an incredibly important role, to not only glycemic control, but GI health. And our gastrointestinal system, starting in the mouth with saliva, and then as we go, and we've already touched on the gastric emptying, components, and again, this is going to be also impacted by our fiber intake. And then last, has it been 3 weeks ago now? You've taught the last couple of weeks, haven't you? Yeah. So 3 weeks ago, we kind of jumped into the abstract, and I encourage, by the time we're done, I'm gonna actually have given you page at a time a 40-page study on the interaction of dietary compounds with the intestinal microbiota. And so this is the handout in the back. It's got the first, several sections on it, including this abstract. And 3 weeks ago, we were talking about how the intestinal microbiome, and for those of you just joining us today, the microbiome is a term referring to the gastrointestinal microorganisms, of which there's a whole bunch. Does anybody remember that number? I think it's up there. How many organisms is it estimated to be in the human GI tract?
Trillions.
All right,
Life says trillions.
and I gotta go with that.
I'd be in trouble.
Yeah, so it's 10 to the 14th.
Oh my goodness.
So if you got 10 and then you add 14 zeros, that's an estimate of how many organisms are in our GI tract. How many times more metabolically active is our GI tract than our liver? Anybody remember that number? Pretty impressive when we talk about the activity of the liver. I mean, we all start thinking about our body's chemist, and wow, it is just so incredibly active. The answer is our GI tract is 100 times more metabolically active than our liver. Isn't that amazing?
I'm just curious because the liver has a function.
As a function.
And is it doing the same thing, same functions that you're talking about?
Not necessarily same function.
Okay.
However, as we start looking at the role of these organisms, it becomes so almost overwhelming. You're sitting here thinking about, our GI tract. So when we were born, right, our GI tract was populated, and then as we eat various foods, our GI tract is populated more and more. We actually then start seeing the development of even more diversity of organisms, and some of those organisms actually become anaerobic, meaning that they do not need oxygen. So they're functioning without oxygen in our GI tract. And then you're sitting here just trying to picture the 10 to the 14th number of organisms. And there's estimated to be 500 to 600 different species. 500 to 600 different species of organisms. So those of us with more of a Norwegian influence would have a different flora in our GI tract, potentially, than someone from Japan, someone from Russia, somebody from here in California even. And so there's a lot of individual variations, and even to the point where they refer to it as almost a fingerprint. Just like a fingerprint is very unique. Same with the GI microbiota. So that was kind of the, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with the abstract and introduction, but I encourage you, grab this, go through this a little bit, and it's amazing. We've just been having so much fun that the time has gone zipping by. So I'm gonna of course give you food for thought, and it'll be another few weeks before we pick up on this topic again. But I'm gonna really encourage this introduction The reason I included this was because I wanted you folks to be able to see just what's going on in the scientific community. There are multiple studies. In 2007, introduced in 2001 was the word microbiome. Then 2007, the scientific community said, oh, hey, wait a minute. I think this might have some profound effects on our overall health. So studies, projects were launched. Growing Scientific, in 2007, they were looking at how the microbiota and correlated changes in microbial populations correlated with human health. The Irish study focused on fecal microbiota associated with aging and aimed to correlate with composition, the composition, diversity, and metabolic potential of the fecal microbial metagenome with health, diet, and lifestyle. So you can kind of start getting an idea. You've got all of these studies going on. European study focused on inflammatory bowel disease and obesity because they're sitting here going, wait a minute, how many people do we have that have inflammatory bowel disease and the epidemic of obesity? Could the microbiome actually be associated with any of that? The French project, 2010, looking for the relationship between intestinal microbiome and the nutritional and metabolic status of the host. So they're looking at, okay, what ratios are there? Australian study, and still in progress, the Korean study, aiming to determine if the microbiome effects on epithelial sites in the human body and the relationship between the human microbiome and disease. So when we start looking at diabetes, we start looking at autoimmune disease processes, all of these studies that have been done are sitting here looking for answers to could it be the dysbiosis, which is creating chaos with the microbiome, that actually is fueling some of these disease processes. And I will tell you, they are finding, just to give you enough to whet your appetite, keep you excited about this, they are finding that a relationship, the ratios are off between people that have diabetes. They are finding the ratios being off with folks that are doing specific diets. And I think I mentioned 3 weeks ago that one specific diet was the avoidance of wheat, barley, rye, trying to avoid gluten. So they are actually finding in that population, when folks are avoiding gluten, the ratios start stacking with more of the negative microbes and predisposing to higher incidence of a variety of disease processes, which is interesting. And like I think I was sharing earlier, I really thought that this study was produced by someone having to do with the Seventh-day Adventist organization, because it was so profound in that it was making recommendations of whole foods, and even having how a meal schedule can affect. Yes?
Between the anaerobic and the aerobic bacteria, is there a more positive effect in one or the other?
And basically we need both.
Okay.
And so as we're going, and we're actually going to, in 3 weeks, we're going to be, I think 3 weeks. I'll have to get my calendar out. But next time I'm here, we're actually going to be looking at some of the specific organisms. There's 4 main classes, or if you will, of organisms, and we're going to actually be looking at the ratio differences that they are finding and the correlated disease processes there. So it's pretty heavy, from a biochemistry aspect, but it is so applicable to every one of us. And that's why I was excited that, that folks from, 2.5 years ago still were interested in revisiting this. So make sure you grab this handout if you don't have it already. And we're going to wrap up, and I'm hopeful that I've whet your appetite enough.
You did.
And
You did.
that you can just go out and have a wonderful vegetable-filled week and be thinking about the fiber benefit, be thinking about how you're enhancing the positive microbiome of your GI tract. Let's close with a word of prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you again for this opportunity that we have to come together. We ask for your continued guidance and blessings in all that we do. We ask that you come alongside folks that are making positive changes in their lives and continue to strengthen them and give them the purpose that they and the strength that they need to make those positive changes. We ask for your blessing as we leave this place and bring us all back together again next week. In Jesus' name.